Just ahead on American Black Journal, the Black Economic Agenda Summit is coming to Detroit. We're going to talk about the event's importance to Black-owned businesses. Plus, we'll tell you about a new funding opportunity for nonprofits, and we'll remember 4 African-American women trailblazers. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, NISSAN Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. A movement for Black economic freedom kicks off this month with a summit organized by the National Business League. That is the trade association founded in 1900 by Booker T. Washington. The event is in Detroit and it focuses on equity, inclusion, and power for the Black business community. Joining me now are the National Business League's president and CEO, Kenneth Harris, and the Detroit chapter president, Hodari Brown. Welcome to American Black Journal, both of you.
Thanks for having us again.
It's good to see you. So let's start with this summit. Tell us what's going to happen.
Yeah, no question about it. The significance of the National Business League celebrating its 120 years nationally, founded by the iconic Booker T. Washington, has really positioned this organization for this great movement, the economic freedom movement. Because of the trajectory of Black businesses, Stephen, growing 3 times the national rate, more than 2.9 million Black-owned firms across the country. The city of Detroit explicitly intrinsic in Black business.
Lots of that, right?
Absolutely, more than 49,000, which is ranked number 4 in the country behind New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Houston. So Detroit has always been the Mecca. So we wanted to come back to this city where we can really showcase Black business and, more importantly, new leadership. So as I've taken on the national presidency and operate out of Washington, D.C., we have our new leadership now, Hodari Brown, who's the new president of the National Business League Detroit chapter.
So give us a thumbnail sketch of the Black business environment here in Detroit. As Ken said, that's a big part of our economy. A lot of the success of Black business nationally, I feel like, started here in the city of Detroit. Where are we right now, though?
So right now, where the Black businesses are in Detroit, it's at a peaking point of where they are looking for the resources and leadership to lead them to get those technical resources, those entrepreneurship training, as well as being tapped into the things that's here, so they can not only thrive not only survive, but thrive. So this is why everything is about to be digitized, and this is what this movement, the economic freedom movement, is about. It's making sure that we rise up and be free as Black businesses, that we are here to support each other.
So talk more about that term, economic freedom.
So
what do you mean by that?
It comes in a number of variety scenarios. One, inclusion, equity, power. I think more importantly in this day and age, due to technology, we always say the revolution will not be televised, it will be digitized. We missed the agricultural revolution, we missed the industrial revolution. A few people benefited, but this next revolution is really suited for Black businesses. It allows for us to compete, especially in environments like Detroit, where obviously we produced a survey several months ago that said 80% of Black business owners felt excluded from the public and private sector in terms of opportunities. And so what's happening now is we're saying, hey, We're taking ownership ourselves. We're going to mobilize black businesses. It's 60% of all businesses in Detroit are black. Most people would not know this. And we're in just about every single industry and sector, with black women being the largest segment of entrepreneurs in the entire country, and Detroit being #1. So this is a great opportunity. We have over 1,000 registrations for next week's event. So there's a tremendous amount of excitement going on. We had to extend registration to get a few more folks in the room. And because of the partially black-owned hotel with Emmett Moulton at the DoubleTree, we'll be going back where 10 years ago, Bill Brooks Sr. and I kicked off the Michigan Black Chamber. And so this is all home, Steve.
Oh, very cool. Hadari, talk about that tension that's unfolding around how black businesses are benefiting from the resurgence that we're seeing in Detroit. I mean, there is a lot more capital being invested in parts of the city, some parts. Black businesses still feel like they're being locked out of that.
So the reality is there's perception, there's reality. So that survey really showed not only the perception, but that's how they're feeling. The people's feelings is the reality. So what we want to do is divide that gap, is bridge that gap that exists. Because while that might be the reality, how can we fix it? How can we get these businesses to be a part of the inclusion of what's new Detroit? Because to them, it's still Detroit been Detroit. It's no such thing as old and new Detroit. Detroit is Detroit.
We're all Detroit.
Absolutely. So that's why these black businesses feel the way they feel, and feel like they've been cut out. Where we want to bridge that is make sure they getting the contract, they getting a piece of the pie, and they getting their equitable share. Because as Dr. Harris just said, 60% of African American business are right there in Detroit. Why they're not getting a part of the contracts for DTE or the Little Caesars Arena or anywhere else in Detroit? And that's what we want to make sure that we're working with the city, we're working with these other organizations and companies to make sure that the black businesses are getting the proper assistance that they need to be where they need to be to get to be the prime contractors and not just subprimes. But if they have to be subprimes, how can we take them from being subprimes to the primes?
To getting to that next step. Capital, of course, always plays a role in that tension. Black businesses don't have the same access to capital that others do. But what are some of the other reasons that you see black businesses not being able to participate as much in Detroit?
Well, capacity is always an issue. And so we know out of the 49,000 black businesses in Detroit, most of them are between 1 and 5 employees. And I always call it, my PhD is in economics, so I try to do simple math. If we were just to focus on that 49,000 to help them hire, grow, and expand, imagine what we could do to our economy. If they could hire 2 or 3 more people, we have just tripled the economy. So this whole notion of where our focus has been in terms of investment, equity, things of that nature in terms of access to capital, which traditional lenders have had a hard time bridging the gap. Now it's our onus to make sure that we're taking these major institutions, like Hadari said, who obviously are dispersing billions of dollars between downtown and midtown in the 3-mile radius, is to start getting that equity into the neighborhoods so that we can build sustainable, long-term, long strategy economic situations that's going to benefit and not send us back to bankruptcy. That's where we're going today.
You do have more black businesses, I feel like, in neighborhoods outside of downtown and midtown, of course, than you do in that 3-mile radius.
No question.
Talk about some of the things that we need for those businesses to thrive. They're not going to go down and get a contract necessarily at LCA or some of the other stuff. They need activity in the neighborhoods, which is another big problem that we face in Detroit.
So absolutely. So those businesses where they don't get a lot of the help is from, like we said, it's going to be about digitizing, making sure that they have websites, make sure that they have a footprint on social media, make sure they have that Google footprint. So if you are a business that is known for baking, if we do a bakery in Detroit on a Google search, you should be able to pop up right away. So how can we get you in that system so that your bakery does pop up, and how can we make sure that you're getting that proper assistance so that you can get the 2 to 3 other people that you need to hire as your proceeds and your profits continue to grow. So that's where the National Black Business League and the Detroit chapter will be working with those type of businesses to make sure that they have a digital footprint out there.
That's something that we don't talk a whole lot about. I've heard you both talk a lot about that today, this idea of the digital revolution and what it's doing to businesses and what businesses need to do to be part of it.
Oh, no question, because it's predicted that if we do not transfer into the digital economy effectively, we could be displaced, marginalized, and isolated as a community. But we're going to take advantage of it. We're not taking a victimization mode anymore. We're going to take ownership. It's time for black businesses to take action and step forward. Some of the largest firms in the world are here that are black owned in the city of Detroit.
That's right.
This is a place that has always revolutionized entrepreneurship. So we're going to kick it off here, start this movement in Detroit, and we're going to hit every urban metropolis throughout America and internationally, because the National Business League has an international footprint. And so this is a huge opportunity to launch this economic platform. And like I said, the future is ours. We have to take advantage of it, and we have to step forward and not focus on others trying to help us out when history has proven that that's not the case.
It's waiting for Godot, right?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations on the summit, and keep up the good work.
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
Great to see
you.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, up next, a new fund to help nonprofits meet the needs of the community. But first, here's a 1983 Detroit Black Journal report on a campaign urging Detroiters to support black businesses in the city.
The small business has become a major focus of the current economic crisis. Detroit, a mecca for black small business over the years, is also an enclave for the mom and pop corner store. Nearly 50 black grocery and party stores have organized through the Black Grocers Association to promote a new Buy Black campaign.
It's time we take action to guarantee that within our own community, everything we need is available in variety, in quality, and at a moderate price. That's what this campaign is all about.
Give your brother and sister a play. Shop at their store today is the slogan attached to its campaign goals. These goals include focusing attention on the black grocer as an important catalyst for black economic advancement, opening lines of communication between black grocers and the community, helping black grocers make needed changes for growth, and forming a united front. The Black Grocers Association works with other groups, including the Metropolitan Food Merchants, the First Association, and Concerned Citizens Council to achieve these goals.
Blacks have never been able to establish an economic base within the black community. By that I mean, for example, if we talk in terms of other ethnic groups, they're able to generate a dollar at least 7 times within that community. On the other hand, in the black community, that same dollar turns over 1 time, which means that our community suffers from that. The importance of a Buy Black campaign is to raise that consciousness to the black community that they have a very powerful leverage in their dollars if used properly.
Nonprofits in Southeast Michigan have a new opportunity to get financial assistance for their work in the community. COACT Detroit is taking applications during March for its newly created Activate Fund. $1.5 million in grants are going to be awarded to nonprofits to help them build capacity. Here to tell us more are Alondra Bulger, she is the Executive Director of COACT Detroit, and Shamil Dobbs, who is CEO of Michigan Community Resources. Thank you both for being here.
Stephen, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So let's start with that word, capacity. We talk a lot about that in the nonprofit sector, and it is one of the biggest challenges that small nonprofits have. But define for the viewers what that means.
Absolutely. You know, COACT Detroit, we opened our doors back in June of 2019. And since that time, we've been working to create a safe and accessible space that nonprofits can connect not only to each other, but also to resources and learning and informational opportunities to move their missions forward. And so ultimately what we're talking about is access. We're talking about access to information, we're talking about access to funders, to really move missions forward for organizations. You know, as our local government, federal government continues to decrease funding, nonprofits are standing in the gaps to ensure that our communities have what they need.
Yeah.
And if I may, I think some of that at a granular level is talent development, it's leadership development, it's looking at internal operations, it's also looking at just the infrastructure of an organization and their ability to be innovative. So when we're talking about investment, it's really at all of those pillars.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who's operating a small nonprofit in the neighborhood where I was born, I know that, you know, you can get your project started, you can get it funded for starting up. But then there comes this point where I feel like you have to transition from a project to an organization. And that is a huge leap. And I think that what you're talking about here is that leap, helping people to figure out how to make what they're doing consistent and sustainable.
Absolutely. And we recognize that that doesn't happen just in the context of the single organization, right? And so when we talk about this fund and the way that we've designed it at COAC with our partners, we're looking at it through a multi-lens approach, right? And so there is the strengthening of the individual organization and their own internal capacity, but also the strengthening of a broader network of players, right? So not just nonprofits, but foundations, for-profits, government, because we recognize that in order for us to have the type of transformational change we want to see in our communities, we've all got to work together around it.
Absolutely. And even for those organizations that have graduated beyond the project level, when you think about organizations that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years, again, to Alondra's point, absent having the access to philanthropic dollars, to investment, to, privilege where you can navigate a space where you can grow your business, grow the things that you're doing, it creates challenges in terms of, one, your own capacity, but your ability to move that project forward and move your work forward and your mission. Yeah.
So let's talk about the process here. How will nonprofits get these dollars?
Absolutely. So the Activate Fund is a $1.5 million fund seeded with initial investment from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. We've been working with our partners, Michigan Community Resources, NEW, the University of Michigan School of Social Work, Data Driven Detroit, Gingras Global, who am I missing? CDAD, a number of folks to create this fund that is also informed by two things. One, the Building a Network report, which is a report that takes a holistic approach to capacity building, but also from feedback from the nonprofit community. So we are seeking to be responsive. And there are two focus areas for the fund. So the first is around fundamentals for nonprofits. And so those applications are open now. We'll be providing $1 million in grants, so 20 grants up to $50,000 for organizations to address a capacity building need in their organization. But then we'll also be leading a collaboration pilot. And so at COAC, we have a number of collaboratives who are working together on everything from food justice to housing affordability in the city. And it's great that we can provide that space for them, but we've been asking, what else do you need to move your work forward? And so we've heard things like a master facilitator, someone who can document the process. And so we'll be also providing funding to help 5 collaboratives move their work forward.
And I think what's also amazing about the fund, it really and truly brings to life the tenets of the Building a Network report. And again, what undergirds that is the fact that we have systemic barriers, we have, a history of racism in our country that then translates itself into how nonprofits are able to navigate the sector. So now having the ability to have resources to really think differently about investing in their own internal capacity is amazing.
You were talking about the collaboration that's also really important and necessary for nonprofits. I feel like we've made a little progress on that front in Detroit, but then I also know too many stories of 2 organizations on disparate parts of the city that are doing really the same thing in their neighborhoods and doing a good job, but maybe don't even know about what the other is up to.
Absolutely. That's why COAC Detroit exists. We approach the work through an asset-based lens. We recognize that there is amazing work happening across our community, but it's disjointed and it's just disconnected, right? And so the tenets of the Building a Network report, the collaboration that is happening not only amongst our 2 organizations, but amongst other nonprofit intermediaries, seek to address that gap and that disconnection. And we see this fund as the impetus or a microcosm of a much broader and bigger systemic approach to addressing that disconnectedness.
Capacity, could that mean physical capacity as well? I know lots of nonprofits who are out of space and need to build something, and that's a different kind of capacity problem, right?
Not in this particular fund. In this particular fund, we are looking across fund development, operations, program evaluation, and program design. And as I mentioned, the applications will be open until the end of March. Folks can find out more about the fund at coacdetroit.org/activate-fund. We'll also be hosting a number of information sessions and open houses for folks to come and get information not only only about the fund, but also to get assistance with completing their applications.
Yeah. But I think what's important to lift up is that the fund is, again, part of a larger network of organizations doing this work. So absent the fund's ability to fund, again, the capacity, physical capacity for organizations to move, organizations like Michigan Community Resources, new University Michigan School of Social Work, CDAT, all of us are looking collectively around how we think about our programs and fill those spaces and gaps around not only, again, for Michigan Community Resources, pro bono legal assistance and how we support organizations legally, but I think it's also about, again, all of the pillars that make for strong organizations.
You should talk just a little more about Michigan Community Resources, what you do and how you fit into this ecosystem here.
So we've been around for 20 years. We started off providing pro bono legal assistance to nonprofit organizations, and then we moved into the space looking at land access. We launched the Vacant Property Campaign roughly about 10 years ago. And again, it was recognizing that organizations, nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations are on the front line for community change in Detroit. And how can we use our positional privilege, organizational privilege to help them meet their missions test? So it's the relationships that we have with foundations that we support their investments by providing additional capacity support to move those projects forward. And then we're also finding spaces where we can connect with our partners again to really amplify the voices of those that are on the ground doing amazing work.
I feel like we're in this maybe rarefied era in Detroit where it seems like there are more small nonprofits, community-based nonprofits doing work that other sectors have pulled back from or just stepped away from altogether.
Absolutely. We find that some of the folks that are coming through our door are predominantly those smaller to medium-sized organizations, and they're just trying to understand how to build their organizations, how to do more, you know, often with less. And so we see this fund as an opportunity to not only push resources out, but bring folks in to understand that there are resources here. There are a number of organizations that are serving nonprofits, and this is an avenue for us to get them to the door.
Okay. Great work, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay, March is Women's History Month, and American Black Journal is remembering 4 African-American female trailblazers who we've lost this year. Katherine Johnson's groundbreaking work for NASA as essentially a human computer was depicted in the book and the movie Hidden Figures. She made history as an African-American woman performing the complex calculations that sent astronauts into orbit in the 1960s. Katherine Johnson was 101 years old. Paula Kelly was an award-winning actress, dancer, and singer. She appeared in Sweet Charity on stage and on the big screen and was one of the first black women to successfully transition from Broadway to movies and television. She won Emmy nominations for her roles in the TV sitcom Night Court and the miniseries The Women of Brewster Place. Paula Kelly was 77. Restaurateur, author, and television host Bea Smith lost her battle with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 70. She was a pioneer who paved the way for black women in the food industry, and she was the first African-American model on the cover of Mademoiselle magazine way back in 1976. And finally, we lost a Detroit icon, Lottie Graves Claiborne, better known as Lottie the Body. We caught up with the 89-year-old last year as she visited one of the Detroit bars where she performed as an exotic dancer in the 1960s. Claiborne was a fixture at clubs in Paradise Valley and Idlewild. She broke racial barriers in the world of burlesque and was often referred to as the Black Gypsy Rose Lee. We salute all of these women for their contributions to African-American history. That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.